Join us as we take on the series featuring a pretty boy, blonde, blue-eyed billionaire who went missing for years, only to return a well-trained, highly skilled superhero who fights crime while wearing a hood. No, not that guy. The other one. The other one. That's right. When Johnnie Torch reviews Iron Fist. Now, just to set the stage, I've made my feelings known on Netflix Marvel series and how none of them have really hit the spot for me. And I went into this show fully expecting the series to have the same weaknesses as the Daredevil. And I wasn't wrong. More on that later. Now, I'm really only familiar with Iron Fist from some of the comics I had as a kid where both he and Luke Cage guest starred as heroes for hire in issues of Marvel Team Up and Marvel 2-in-1. So I pretty much only remember him as a student of the martial arts in a snazzy costume. Critics seem to savage this show, but not without cause. The first 2 episodes are abysmal, where Danny Rand shows back up in New York shoeless and homeless. Despite being declared dead for some 15 years, he's looking to be accepted back by his childhood friends Joy and Ward Meacham, who are now running his family's company. Eventually, Danny is thrown into a mental institution, and it seems like a foolish scenario. Unless this series is set on a parallel Earth, or in the 17th century, a simple fingerprint test could have resolved the entire issue. The first 2 episodes could have been truncated to the time it took Bruce Wayne to enter Wayne Corp in Batman Begins. The next couple of episodes are not much better, but they set the stage for Danny's return to his company and all the legal wrangling therein. We also set up Colleen Wing's character. In typical Netflix fashion, the series meanders around quite a bit, but things begin tightening up around the midway point, so if you're serious about giving this series a chance, stick it out until the 5th or 6th episode. From there on, I'll admit, I found the series consistently entertaining. Finn Jones did a capable job as Iron Fist. I think he plays him more in that CW fashion than we've seen in the Netflix shows, but I was fine with that. A lot of people have criticized Danny for being a bland protagonist, but I don't see that. If anything, I think Danny is a bit too naive during the course of the series. He seems to be consistently trusting the wrong people, and then beating himself up when they betray him. I really don't know if he came across this gullible in the comics, but it's noticeable here. I really liked Jessica Henwick's Colleen Wing in this series. She was consistently fun to watch and arguably kicked as much, if not more butt than our protagonist. She has some cool twists and turns in her story that caught me at least unaware. One of my favorite performances in the series was by Tom Pelphrey as Ward Meacham. He struck me as kind of a cross between a young James Woods and Frank Whaley. He gives a very compelling performance as a very troubled and conflicted soul. The lovely Jessica Stroup plays Joy Meacham. She seems like the most level-headed character in the Meacham family, but seems to take a strange heel turn in the waning moments of the season. I guess that's to set up something that was actually in the comics, but it seems to come out of nowhere here. Rosario Dawson returns as the ubiquitous Claire Temple, aka Night Nurse. I think it's getting fairly contrived that they manage to work her into these shows every time. It doesn't feel as organic as Coulson did in the MCU, but she seems to be needed the most in this series as the connective tissue holding the story together and bringing some needed humor. The Hand is the villain for most of the series, featuring the return of the always enigmatic Madame Gao, played by Wai Ching Ho. The real villain of the piece is the Meachams' Rasputin-esque father, Harold, played by David Wenham, who keeps returning from the dead via the Hand. He's suitably creepy while having an underlying charm. Another of my favorite characters in the series was that of Davos, played by Sacha Dhawan. His character was pretty much what I hoped Baron Mordo's would be in Doctor Strange. He doesn't get a whole lot of screen time, but you see him going from being Danny's trusted friend to bitter rival. He experiences betrayal and envy from seeing Danny become the Iron Fist and leaving Kunlun, which at least to me is more palpable than Mordo's, "You guys are using gray methods. I'm too pure to get down with that, so now I'll turn evil," over in Doctor Strange. I thought the action scenes were pretty good, Nothing you haven't seen before, I guess, but for a character well versed in kung fu, there's plenty of it to go around in the later half of the series. Now, the things that bugged me are pretty much the things that bugged me in Daredevil. The protagonist isn't allowed a costume, though there is an Ant-Man-ish scene where we glimpse an earlier Iron Fist in the familiar costume, in old, grainy black and white footage. Unlike Daredevil, he still doesn't get a costume in the end, despite his origin being complete. Like Daredevil, there isn't a whole lot devoted to his origin in Kunlun. We get a lot of telling, not showing. We see the plane crash that killed his parents, and his getting beaten with sticks by the monks as a kid, because nothing says superhero training like child abuse, I suppose. If you're hoping to see a certain dragon, well, let's just say that particular story should have been told on the big screen. As anyone who knows me is aware, I'm not a fan of graphic violence. They lulled me into a false sense of security here, but midway through the series there is some gory crap that I could have done without. Also, the harsh language was more toned down here from the other shows, so that was a plus. The series also has the same problem of 10-minute dialogue scenes that seem to go on, but they actually seem to go down better for me here than in Daredevil. Maybe my expectations were unusually high for Daredevil, or maybe I just know less about Iron Fist and that makes me more forgiving, but I think I actually seem to enjoy this series more. After about the first 4 episodes in, I was really interested in the ongoing story, and I didn't feel like the story was dragging, which isn't something I could say about the other Netflix shows. I guess putting the boring stuff first helped the typical mid-season drag, but they could have cut out the first 2 episodes entirely and maybe reworked the next 2 to make the season flow better still. The series also appealed to me in its retro tone. It's not overly grim and gritty like the previous shows. It felt like a show that could have existed in the 70s where you have a costumeless hero in the real world punching out crooks instead of dragons, and making us wait till the end of the episode to showcase the gimmick for a couple of minutes. I can imagine waiting all episode for that Iron Fist to light up at the end if I were a kid. I'm giving Marvel Netflix Iron Fist 3.5 stars out of 5. I think that's about what I gave both seasons of Daredevil. They really haven't made a season that was more than above average to me. Is this show the best of the Marvel Netflix shows? I think my favorite has to be the first 4 episodes of Daredevil Season 2. I think with a little editing that would have made a pretty cool movie. But I think I felt more invested in Iron Fist. I didn't feel so freaking depressed going through it. And I actually looked forward to each episode, and to where they can go next with Iron Fist. So I guess they accomplished a lot with a Netflix skeptic like myself. Until next time, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.